I teach a meditation that utilizes awareness. I find awareness meditation to be the simplest, most effective way to meditate. It's good for helping with things like anxiety, to pop those bubbles of fear in our minds, for things like depression or addiction issues, both of which are actually related to pain avoidance in the body. Using awareness, we can bring awareness into the body and help dissolve some of that pain within minutes. So what is awareness? Awareness is the witnessing consciousness looking out of your eyes right now. It's looking out of my eyes too. It's the background consciousness that's been there your whole life. Before your thoughts, it's that which witnesses thoughts. Before your name, it's totally non-personal, and it's always been there. Because it's in the background, it's sort of like the ground we're walking on. We just tend to not notice that it's there. And I've been around a while. I've been a clinical psychologist, a professor, and now a coach for over 20 years. And I know the difference between all the different meditations that are offered and awareness meditation. Psychology Today, the most widely read publication in psychology, says that meditation is a mental exercise that trains attention and awareness. And that's what I find most meditations are doing. The most popular being like transcendental meditation or mindfulness meditation. In transcendental meditation, you pick a mantra and focus on that and repeat the mantra. In mindfulness, you're watching your thoughts and maybe focusing on your breath. And both of them have a benefit. You can provide a pause in your day and a little bit of rest, but the benefits are limited. And the reason they're limited is because of this premise that it's a mental exercise that focuses attention and awareness. And that premise is actually backward. So I want to talk about how that premise is backward and why it's backward. So how it's backward is that awareness is seen to be an aspect of the mind, or if you're a neuroscientist type, it's an aspect of the brain, what they call an epiphenomenon of the brain. So somehow awareness or consciousness comes out of the brain. And in the mindfulness camp, there's this idea that it's an aspect of the mind. And so when you're meditating, you're using one aspect of the mind or one aspect of the brain to assist the other aspect, right? So it's a mental aspect. In mindfulness, you're going to use what they might call the calm mind to help the anxious mind. If you're using neuroscience language, you're going to be using the prefrontal cortex to help the limbic system or the default mode network. And the premise there is wrong because it is awareness that's seeing the mind and the brain. It's the background. It's that which is looking at the mind. And we miss it. We miss that whole truth because it's seen to be an aspect of the mind. So that filter of what awareness is wrong. It's sort of like if you were walking in the forest and you're just focused on two trees and you're missing everything that the trees come out of. So you're missing the rest of the forest, you're missing the ground, you're missing the air, you're missing the sun, the water, you're missing the whole context of these two trees and thinking that sort of one tree begets another tree. We know that's not the case. The one tree doesn't come out of the other tree. Both of the trees come out of the fuller context behind them in the background. And so that's what awareness is. Awareness doesn't come out of the mind or out of the brain and the mind come out of it. So that's how it's backward. Now, why is it backward? Well, we live in Western society, or at least I do. In Western society generally, and now it's actually mostly global, there is a premise called materialism. Materialism says that the most fundamental thing in the world is material form, that's the most fundamental, basic aspect of reality. Now, this wasn't the case with indigenous cultures, many of whom do not have a materialist point of view. And it's also not the case in all mystic traditions of all religion and spiritual traditions. Those mystic traditions, people discover for themselves the reality of oneness, that there is just one movement here. There are not separate forms at the most fundamental aspect of reality. But we live in a materialist worldview, whether we know it or not. In physics, you'll see this search for the Higgs boson, the sort of smallest particle. There's a real focus on the material form is the most fundamental, so that's what you'll find. You see it in our language, where there's a real implication that it's a noun acting on another noun in the English language. In more traditional societies and in more ancient languages, you have more of a sort of verbing quality, or in pictographs in Chinese language, you have the larger context is inside of the language. But in Western culture, materialism reigns. So then awareness is seen to be just another aspect of material, right? It's an aspect of mind or an aspect of the brain. That's the only way materialism could understand it. Or if you're a hardcore materialist like the philosopher Daniel Dennett, you'll just throw it out entirely because it doesn't work. But in our meditations, using awareness, you find out for yourself what it really is and who you really are. It's a realization of oneness of this vast context, this field that we've missed before. That's very direct and very simple. It's not for a select few or enlightened ones or anything like that. It's totally available to you. The word healing originally means returning to wholeness. That's what healing really is. So I invite you to join my meditation series. It's called Simple Being, and all the information's below, along with information on other talks where I'm talking about consciousness and awareness. Or let's schedule a chat and let's talk. Thanks.